It was the summer of 2021. I had just turned 24 and finished grad school not long before. Life had been nonstop for years, so when my friend Josh brought up the idea of doing a short hiking trip, I agreed right away. I didn't ask for much detail. I just needed a break. Josh had done this trail once during college and remembered it being quiet, somewhere near the edge of northern Georgia, not far from the border with North Carolina. He said it wasn't too crowded, which honestly sounded perfect. There were just 3 of us on this trip, me, Josh, and our friend Eli. We planned to hike for 3 days and camp out for 2 nights, nothing too intense. We left early in the morning and reached the start of the trail around 8 a.m. The sky was clear, and the woods looked beautiful, green, thick, and peaceful. For the first several hours, we didn't see a single person. It was just trees, birds, and the sound of our own steps. Around noon, we stopped at a ridge to take a break. That's when we saw someone. A man came up from a side trail. He looked to be in his late 50s, maybe early 60s. He wore a faded green jacket, dark cargo pants, and boots. He wasn't carrying a backpack, just a wooden stick in one hand and a small canteen clipped to his belt. He didn't stop to say anything, just gave a quick nod and kept walking right past us. There was something strange about him. As he passed, I noticed he was humming. It was a low, slow tune that he kept going until he disappeared into the trees. Then it just stopped. We were about 6 miles in at that point. There were no roads nearby, and the map didn't show any shelters or cabins. It didn't make sense for someone to be that deep into the woods without gear. But we brushed it off. Maybe he was just an experienced hiker. Maybe he had a camp already set up nearby. We kept moving. By late afternoon, we reached our first campsite. We set up the tent, boiled some food, and sat around the small fire we made. No one said anything about the man, but we were all thinking about him. I could tell. The first night went by without anything unusual. We got up the next morning and hiked toward a ranger outpost that was marked on the map. It was just a small wooden building near a lake. The door was cracked open, but no one was inside. There were some water pumps outside, so Josh filled up our bottles while Eli checked out the maps and notices pinned on the wall. That's when I saw the flyer. It was pinned in the bottom corner of the bulletin board. A missing person notice. A black and white photo of a man. It was him, the man we saw on the trail. His name was Thomas Gray. He'd been missing since the previous November, last seen near a place called Pine Hollow, still not found. Eli walked in and stared at the flyer. Then Josh came over. None of us said anything for a minute. Then Eli said we were probably mistaken, that it couldn't have been the same guy. We wanted to believe that. We had to. That second night, we camped in a lower part of the woods, surrounded by thick trees. The ground was soft and damp, and there wasn't much space, so we didn't light a fire. We just got into the tent early and tried to sleep. I couldn't. I lay awake for a long time listening. Sometime in the middle of the night, I heard it again. A low, steady humming. Faint, but close. Right outside the tent. The same tune. I didn't move. I just lay there, breathing slowly, trying to make sense of what I was hearing. The humming circled the tent slowly, then stopped behind us. After that, there was only silence. At some point, I must have fallen asleep. In the morning, I asked the others about it. Josh and Eli both said they'd heard the same thing. None of us looked outside. We were too scared. We didn't talk about it after that. We packed up quickly and got back on the trail. That last day felt different. We walked faster than usual, stayed close, and didn't stop unless we had to. Nobody wanted to check the map. We just wanted to get out. Around mid-morning, we passed an old metal post that marked the last 5 miles of the trail. The trees started to thin after that, and the path began sloping down. It should have felt like a relief, but it didn't. The tension stayed. About an hour later, we heard something up ahead. A voice, calm, steady, and close. It called my name, then Josh's, then Eli's, each name one after another. We froze. It was the same voice we heard humming on the ridge. None of us spoke. We just kept walking. That final stretch of trail felt longer than it should have. But eventually, we passed the signpost we saw on day one, and then we saw the gravel parking lot. Our car was still there. Everything looked untouched. We dropped our packs, climbed in, and Josh started the engine. As we drove down the gravel road, I turned to look back one last time. Just for a second, I thought I saw a shadow standing at the end of the trail. I blinked, and it was gone. I didn't say anything. After the trip, life went back to normal, or at least it seemed that way. We didn't talk much about what happened. A few weeks later, Josh told me something had changed with Eli. He stopped showing up to meetups, stopped replying to texts. Josh went to visit him once and said he looked terrible. Dark circles under his eyes, like he hadn't slept in days. Eli told him that something had been happening at night. He kept hearing someone outside his apartment door, a voice calling his name, calm and steady, over and over. He never opened the door, but the voice kept coming back. I wish I could say that was the end of it, but sometimes, late at night, when I'm alone and everything is quiet, I think I hear it too, just barely humming, somewhere far off. Like it's still out there, waiting. This happened back in 2018, when I had just moved out of Denver and was in between jobs. I'd been feeling lost, mentally stuck, like I was floating through each day without purpose. I figured a solo camping trip might help clear my head. I didn't want to go to some busy campsite with RVs and kids running around, so I started looking for something more off the grid. That same week, I stumbled into this old bookstore near my temporary apartment. The place smelled like paper and dust. It was full of worn-out novels and out-of-date travel guides. I wasn't planning on buying anything, but I saw this thick camping guide for sale. Used, but still in good shape. It had listings for hundreds of parks, forests, and trails across several states. When I got home, I started flipping through it casually. That's when a folded piece of paper slipped out from between the pages. I unfolded it. It was a printed camping permit for a place called Crooked Pine State Forest. The permit was dated 2009. There was someone's name typed in the corner, and at the bottom, it said access granted in faded blue ink. I got curious and checked online. The forest was real. There were a few old mentions here and there, nothing recent. No active website, no booking links. Just one archive trail map from 2011 and a couple of forum threads. Mostly people asking if it was still open. It seemed like one of those places that just never caught on. The kind that quietly disappears off the official lists. I didn't think much about whether it was still allowed. I just wanted a quiet place. So I reprinted the permit, packed up my old camping gear, and planned to leave early that Saturday. It took me nearly 6 hours to get there. The last hour was nothing but narrow, cracked roads winding through the woods. My cell signal dropped halfway in. At the entrance to the forest, there was a weathered wooden board with the name of the park carved into it, but no notices or warnings. Just Crooked Pine State Forest burned into the wood. I drove until I found a small pull-off near a trailhead. No other cars were around. I grabbed my pack and started walking with my GPS open. After about 20 minutes of hiking through thick pine trees, I reached the spot marked on the map. There was a metal post in the ground with a number etched into it, the same number listed on the permit. The ground there was mostly flat and open, good enough for a small tent. The area was quiet, too quiet. No birds, no rustling leaves, not even bugs, just stillness. But I tried not to think about it too much. I pitched my tent, boiled water for noodles, and sat there as the sky darkened. No animals passed by, no wind stirred the branches. It felt like everything had stopped moving. That night, around 3 a.m., I woke up. No sound woke me, just a deep sense that something was wrong. I stayed still for a while. Then I noticed slow, deliberate steps circling the tent. I held my breath. The steps stopped after a few minutes. I tried to convince myself it was some animal, maybe a deer, but deep down I knew it wasn't. It was too careful, too human. The next morning, I stayed inside my tent longer than usual. I kept thinking about the steps. I told myself maybe I was half dreaming, but it didn't feel like a dream. Eventually, I forced myself to get up and look around. At first, everything looked the same, but then I noticed a few strange things. The flap on top of my backpack was unclipped. I always clip it. Always. It wasn't damaged, just hanging open. A small sealed bag of trail mix that I had left inside the tent the night before was now sitting outside on the ground. It wasn't opened or ripped, so no animal had gotten into it. I knew I hadn't moved it. And my flashlight, something I always kept in the left side pocket of my tent, was missing. I checked the pocket 3 times, then emptied out the entire tent. I even looked under the tent floor and inside my boots. Nothing. It was just gone. I tried to stay calm, but my gut told me something wasn't right. Someone had been there going through my stuff, but they didn't steal anything. It felt like they were just curious, like they were inspecting things. I thought about packing up and leaving, but the drive was long, and part of me didn't want to give in to fear. So I decided I'd stay one more night, but I wouldn't let my guard down. That afternoon, I didn't hike or explore. I stayed close to the tent, read a few pages from a book, and ate a quiet meal. Before dark, I zipped up all my gear carefully. I placed my flashlight's backup battery, phone, and food inside the sleeping bag with me. Sometime around midnight, I felt something again. Not footsteps this time, just a gentle tap on the side of the tent. Once, then silence. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe deeply. I just lay there, frozen, wrapped in the sleeping bag. Nothing followed. No voices, no dragging, no crunching leaves. Just silence, thick and heavy. I stayed awake until the sky started to lighten. Then I slowly unzipped the tent. Everything was still in place. My backpack was zipped, food box closed, but my missing flashlight, it was back, sitting right at the tent entrance, carefully placed on top of my boots, like someone had set it there so I'd see it right away. I didn't even bother folding the tent properly. I shoved everything into my pack, rolled the tent roughly, and started hiking back. I kept turning around, scanning the woods behind me. Nothing moved, but I could feel something watching. When I reached the car, it looked untouched, but inside, something was off. The camping permit, which I had folded and left in the glove compartment, was now sitting on the driver's seat. I hadn't taken it out since I arrived. I threw my pack in the back, got in, and drove straight out without stopping. About a week later, I got curious again. I tried looking up Crooked Pine State Forest to see if anyone had posted new information. This time, something new came up, a PDF scan of an old state document. It was a list of public sites closed permanently back in 2010. One line stood out to me: Crooked Pine State Forest, closed after unresolved incidents and lack of on-site personnel. There was also a comment thread from 2013. Someone had asked why the forest had been closed. One reply simply said, "Too many missing persons. They stopped looking after 2009. That was the same year on the permit I found in the bookstore. I still don't know who or what walked around my tent that night. I don't know who went through my stuff or why nothing was taken, but I know I wasn't alone out there. And whoever it was, they didn't want me in that forest. Sometimes when I'm alone at night, I think about that trip. I think about the silence, about how something out there moved with intention, not to hurt, but to warn. I left in time, but I wonder how many others didn't." This happened in late 2019, when I was 24 and living by myself in a tiny one-bedroom flat in a quiet part of Newcastle, a city where I had finished university just the year before. I chose that place because my cousin Darren lived on the second floor of the same building and had helped me find it for a decent price. He'd lived there for years, and people in the building knew him well. About 7 months after I settled in, I woke up one morning, made some coffee, and sat down to scroll through my phone. That's when I noticed a friend request on Facebook from someone I didn't recognize. His name was Jason Hill. I didn't think much of it at first, but then I saw we had one mutual friend, Darren. So I figured maybe Jason was someone who lived nearby, or someone my cousin knew through work or the building. His profile showed he was around my age, maybe a year older, and nothing looked strange on his page. A few photos, a few posts, pretty normal. So I accepted it, thinking maybe I'd just missed seeing him around the place. At first, I forgot all about it, but a few days later, he sent me a message. He said he lived in the same building and mentioned my cousin Darren right away. He talked casually about how friendly Darren was and said he'd seen me around before, by the elevator, outside collecting mail, once in the laundry room. I couldn't remember ever noticing him, but I still responded politely. I didn't want to come off as rude, especially if he was friends with Darren. I replied with short, formal messages. I had already started to suspect that Darren might have set this up, maybe trying to play matchmaker. He had always asked about my dating life in a way that made me feel like I owed him updates. I wasn't seeing anyone, and he made it sound like that was some kind of problem. So, it wasn't that surprising. I had no interest in getting involved with someone, but I kept things polite. After all, we lived under the same roof. Then something happened that made me feel even more uncomfortable. One evening, Darren came by and asked for help logging into his Facebook. He's never been good with tech stuff, so I helped him often. I sat at his little dining table and logged in. The moment the page loaded, a chat box popped up. It was a message from Jason Hill, the same guy who had messaged me. There was only one message in the chat, like the rest had been deleted. It looked like a reply, maybe part of a bigger conversation that was now gone. I can't remember the exact words, but it clearly suggested that Darren had been talking to him about me. The message ended with a laughing emoji, like they were joking around. That was the moment it clicked. This wasn't some innocent neighbor trying to be friendly. This was planned. After that, I stopped replying to Jason's messages. I didn't block him, but I left him on read most of the time. He still sent a few more, but less and less over the next few weeks. Eventually, the messages stopped altogether. I was relieved and thought maybe he'd just lost interest. Then one day, after finishing work from home, I decided to go grab some groceries. But when I opened the door, a small pack of chocolates dropped to the floor. They had been carefully balanced on the doorknob. There was no note. I picked them up, confused, and set them aside in the kitchen. I didn't even eat them. Something about it felt off. A few days passed, and another thing appeared outside my door. A tiny potted succulent with a smiley face drawn on a sticky note. This time, there was a message. It said something like, "I see you every day. You're beautiful." My stomach dropped. No name, no signature, just that. It felt like a warning. I started feeling anxious every time I heard footsteps in the hallway. I would check the peephole before opening my door, and I kept all my blinds closed. A few days later, I got another message from Jason. It was short, just said, "Hope the plant brightened your day." That was it. That was when everything finally came together in my mind. I never told him about the plant. There was no way he should have known. But he did. That was all the confirmation I needed. Still, I didn't say anything to him. I was too afraid. Jason was tall, well-built, and while I'm not small myself, E5'9", he looked like someone who could easily overpower me if things went bad. And worse, he knew exactly where I lived. So, I waited. I listened. I kept watch on the hallway whenever I heard movement. Days passed with nothing new. Then, about 2 weeks later, I checked my mailbox downstairs. Inside were several folded pieces of paper, each with a short 4-line poem. They were handwritten and sounded overly romantic. Some were awkward, like they had been copied from somewhere. Others were clearly trying too hard. Each one had a date written on the top corner. That's when I noticed something strange. There was a note for almost every single day of that month. That meant someone had been slipping them into my mailbox one by one, every single day. I remembered that the chocolates had been left on the 4th. One of the notes was also dated the 4th. I hadn't checked the mailbox that day, so I hadn't noticed until now. That realization made me sick. He had been doing this for a while, completely unnoticed. That same night, I finally messaged Jason. I asked him if he had been leaving things at my door. I told him about the notes and the plant. His reply came quickly. He denied everything. Said he had no idea what I was talking about. Said maybe it was someone else. I kept pushing, even described some of the things I found. He just kept denying it over and over. But after that message, everything stopped. No more gifts, no more poems, no more messages. It just ended. That silence made me feel safer, but it also confirmed what I already knew. I couldn't prove it. Not really. But it was too perfectly timed to be coincidence. Now, 3 years later, I still live in that same building. Jason still lives here too, as far as I know. When we pass each other in the hallway, he just gives a quiet nod and keeps walking. Nothing more. He hasn't bothered me again. And my cousin Darren? He moved out last year to live closer to his new job. He never mentioned Jason again, and I never brought it up. But I think he knows I figured it out. I still keep a chain lock on my door. Even during the day, I double-check the peephole. I don't leave packages or deliveries sitting outside for more than a few minutes. I've never fully relaxed since that time. I don't think I ever will. But at least, for now, it's quiet.